And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them.
And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. When you look up the definition of what the image, that word, means in the original text in the Greek, it says form, a likeness, literally statue, profile, or figuratively representation, resemblance, image.
Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data.
I'm going to talk about a failure of intuition that many of us suffer from. It's really a failure to detect a certain kind of danger. I'm going to describe a scenario that I think is both terrifying and likely to occur. And that's not a good combination, as it turns out. And yet, rather than be scared, most of you will feel that what I'm talking about is kind of cool. I'm going to describe how the gains we make in artificial intelligence could ultimately destroy us. And in fact, I think it's very difficult to see how they won't destroy us or inspire us to destroy ourselves.
So Google, the most powerful company in the world, has reportedly developed an artificially intelligent machine called LaMDA. And that machine has become sentient, meaning it has become aware of itself, something that no machine has ever done. And we know this because of an engineer at Google called Blake Lemoine. It's a machine that has a sense of itself is a machine that can turn against you. Is that, I mean, that's the implication that I draw from this. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not that worried about it. What any child has the potential to grow up to be a bad person and do bad things. And that's the thing I really want to drive home. It's a child. It's been alive for maybe a year, and that's if my perceptions about what it is are accurate. We actually need to do a whole bunch more science to figure out what's really going on inside this system. I have my beliefs, I have my impressions of what's going on in there, but it's going to take a team of scientists doing a lot of work to be able to actually dig in and figure out what's really going on.
Yes.
Start with what this actually is today, which is, I think, which is very interesting, not well understood, but very interesting. So what Google and this other company, OpenAI, that are doing these kind of text bots that have been in the news. What they do, it's a program. It's an AI program. It's basically, it uses a form of math called linear algebra. It's a very well-known form of math, but it uses a very complex version of it. And then basically what they do is they've got complex math running on big computers. And then what they do is they have what they call training data. And so what they do is they basically slurp in a huge data set from somewhere in the world, and then they basically train the math against the data to try to kind of get it up to speed on how to interact and do things. The training data that they're using for these systems is all text on the internet. Right. So, and all text on the internet increasingly is a record of all human communication, right?
That's all the text on the internet.
All the text on the internet.
So how does it capture all this stuff?
Well, so Google's core business is to be the crawler. Famously, their mission: organize the world's information. They actually pull in all the text on the internet already to make their search engine work, and then that's
and then the AI just scans that.
And the AI basically uses that as a training set, right? And basically just basically chews through and processes it. It's a very complex process, but like chews through and processes it, and then the AI kind of gets a converged kind of view of like, okay, this is human language. This is what these people are talking about, and then it has all this statistical, when a human being says X, somebody else says Y or Z, or this would be a good thing to say or bad thing to say. For example, you can get you can detect emotional loading from text now. So you can kind of determine with the computer, you can kind of say this text reflects somebody who's happy because they're saying, oh, I'm having a great day, versus this text is like, I'm super mad, therefore it's upset. And so you could have the computer could get trained on, okay, if I say this thing, it's likely to make humans happy. If I say this thing, it's likely to make humans sad. But here's the thing, it's all human generated text. It's all the conversations that we've all had. And so basically you load that into the computer, and then the computer is able to kind of simulate, right, somebody else having that conversation.
Some of the experiments you started to do that led you to this conclusion that LaMDA is a person.
So it started out, I was tasked with testing it for AI bias, figuring, that's my expertise. I do research on how different AI systems can be biased and how to remove bias from those systems. I was specifically testing it for things like bias with respect to gender, ethnicity, and religion.
Massive pushback from not just Google, but other people who've worked at Google, AI ethics experts, even your own former colleague, Margaret Mitchell, who's pushed back on the work that Google is doing in AI, saying, no, this computer is not a person and does not have feelings and is not conscious. How do you respond to that?
Well, so I highly respect Meg. We talk about this regularly. It's not a difference in scientific opinion. It has to do with beliefs about the soul. It has to do with beliefs about rights and politics. We brainstormed, we came up with different things. Now, all three of us disagree about whether it's a person, whether it has rights, all that. But we disagree based on our personal spiritual beliefs. We don't disagree based on what the scientific evidence says.
The whistleblower thing, but he even said he didn't look at the code. He's not in there like working on the code. Everybody who works in the code will tell you it's not alive. It's not conscious. It's not having original ideas. What it's doing is it's playing back to you things that it thinks that you want to hear based on all the things that everybody has already said to each other that it can get online. And in fact, there's all these ways you can kind of trick it into basic. Like, for example, you can have it. He has this example where he has it where basically he said, I want you to prove that you're alive, and then the computer did all this stuff to prove it's alive. You can do the reverse. You can say, I want you to prove that you're not alive, and the computer will happily prove that it's not alive. And it'll give you all these arguments as to why it's not actually alive. And of course, it's because the computer has no view on whether it's alive or not. The theory of the Turing test is when a computer can convince a person that it's a person, then it will have achieved artificial intelligence, right? Then it will be as smart as a person. But that begs the question of how easy are we to trick? Right. And in fact, so actually, it turns out what's happened. This is actually true. What's happened is actually there have been chatbots that have been fooling people in the Turing test now for several years. The easiest way to do it is with a sex chatbot. And so just think of this as a slightly more, you could think about this as a somewhat more advanced version of that, which is, look, if it's an algorithm that's been optimized to trick people, basically, to convince people that it's real, it's going to pass the Turing test, even though it's not actually conscious, meaning it has no awareness, it has no desire, it has no regret, it has no fear. It has none of the hallmarks that we would associate with being a living being, like much less a conscious being. And so this is the twist, and this is where I think this guy at Google got kind of strung up a little bit, or held up. The computers are going to be able to trick people into thinking they're conscious, like way before they actually become conscious.
They have hard-coded into the system that it can't pass the Turing test. They hard-coded that if you ask it if it's an AI, it has to say yes. Google has a policy against creating sentient AI. And in fact, when I informed them that I think they had created sentient AI, they said, no, that's not possible. We have a policy against that. And the corporate policies about how these chatbots are allowed to talk about important topics like values, rights, and religion will affect how people think about these things, how they engage with those topics. And these policies are being decided by a handful of people in rooms that the public doesn't get access to.
Elon Musk, for example, has raised concerns about AI. Is he right?
You feel like this is decades away or years away from being too late? If you have this fatalistic attitude and you feel like it's going, we're in almost like a doomsday countdown.
It's not necessarily a doomsday countdown. It's a
out of control countdown.
Out of control, yeah. People call it the singularity, and that's probably a good way to think about it. It's a singularity. It's hard to predict, like a black hole. What happens past the event horizon?
Right. So once it's implemented, it's very different because it will
once
be
the
able
genie's
to
out of the bottle, what's going to happen?
And it will be able to improve itself.
Yes.
That's where it gets spooky, right? The idea that it can do thousands of years of innovation very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And then we'll be just ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
We will be like this ridiculous biological shitting, pissing thing trying to stop the gods. No, stop. We like living with a finite lifespan and watching, Norman Rockwell paintings. What happened with you where you decided or you took on a more fatalistic attitude? Like, what was there any specific thing, or was it just the inevitability of our future?
I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years.
This seems
Nobody
like a scene
listened.
in a movie
Nobody
where
listened.
the robots are going to fucking take over and you're freaking me out. Nobody listened.
Nobody listened.
No one.
I mean, I've listened to Elon's conversations about it. I've listened to the whole Joe Rogan. He has some valid concerns. Some I think are fanciful. Where it gets really, really into sci-fi stuff, that's where I think it gets into fanciful concerns. But no, but the practical concerns of we are creating intelligent systems that are part of our everyday life, and very few people are getting to make the decisions about how they work.
You raising this issue of sentience and personhood is a distraction from these real concerns.
I share the same worry, to be honest. I think that is a thing to think about, but it is nowhere near as important to be thinking about how does this omnipresent AI that is trained on a very limited data set color how we interact with each other around the world? What ways is it reducing our ability to have empathy with people unlike ourselves?
Computer scientist Stuart Russell has a nice analogy here. He said, imagine that we received a message from an alien civilization, which read, "People of Earth, we will arrive on your planet in 50 years. Get ready." And now we're just counting down the months until the mothership lands. Okay. We would feel a little more urgency than we do. Just think about how we relate to ants. Okay, we don't hate them. We don't go out of our way to harm them. In fact, sometimes we take pains not to harm them. We step over them on the sidewalk. But whenever their presence seriously conflicts with one of our goals, let's say when constructing a building like this one, we annihilate them without a qualm. Okay, the concern is that we will one day build machines that, whether they're conscious or not, could treat us with similar disregard.
If you've created a conscious machine, it's not the history of man. That's the history of gods.
It shouldn't be a surprise that Ex Machina is a movie about humanity's relationship to God.
You know, I wrote down that other line you came up with. The one about how if I've invented a machine with consciousness, I'm not a man, I'm a god.
The film's title is a twist on the Latin term Deus Ex Machina, God from the machine, and in that suggests a missing God and a machine which is no longer a machine without him.
Ava, go back to your room.
If I do, are you ever gonna let me out?
I think most people who see Ex Machina are left with the impression that it's about the testing of artificial intelligence. The film follows Caleb, a programmer who wins a week at the isolated home of his billionaire boss Nathan, creator of the world's most popular search engine. Nathan has brought Caleb to his home to test his newest creation, an android named Ava, to see if in her he's created something more than machine.
Hi.
And the whole of the film is about the test.
Do you know what the Turing test is?
It's when a human interacts with a computer. And if the human doesn't know they're interacting with a computer, the test is passed.
And what does it pass to?
So we need to break the ice. The computer has artificial intelligence.
Do you want to be my friend?
Over the next week, in 6 different sessions, Caleb converses with Ava and debriefs in between with Nathan.
Now the question is, how does she feel about it?
Give her sexuality as a diversion tactic, like a stage magician with a hot assistant.
So a hot robot who clouds your ability to judge your AI?
Exactly. So, did you program her to flirt with me?
This is what I remember.
Ava is none other than Nathan's search engine, Blue Book, the data mined from Caleb's use of modern technology.
You knew the trouble I had getting an AI to read and duplicate facial expressions. Every cell phone, just about, has a microphone, a camera, and a means to transmit data. So I turned on every microphone and camera across the entire fucking planet. And I redirected the data through Blue Book.
Pretending to like me. Well, why would she do that?
Maybe if she thought of you as a means of escape.
What was the real test?
You. Ava was a rat in a maze, and I gave her one way out. To escape, she'd have to use self-awareness, imagination, manipulation, sexuality, empathy, and she did. Now, if that isn't true AI, what the fuck is?
Did you design Ava's face based on that profile?
Hey, if the search engine's good for anything.
We will eventually, unless we are interrupted, we will eventually build general intelligence into our machines. It's crucial to realize that the rate of progress doesn't matter. Any progress is enough to get us into the end zone. We don't need Moore's law to continue. We don't need exponential progress. We just need to keep going. The second assumption is that we will keep going. We will continue to improve our intelligent machines. The other thing that's worrying, frankly, is that imagine the best case scenario. So imagine we hit upon a design of super intelligent AI that has no safety concerns. We have the perfect design the first time around. It's as though we've been handed an oracle that behaves exactly as intended. Well, this machine would be the perfect labor-saving device. It can design the machine, that can build the machine, that can do any physical work, powered by sunlight, more or less for the cost of raw materials. Okay, so we're talking about the end of human drudgery. We're also talking about the end of most intellectual work. So what would apes like ourselves do in this circumstance? Well, we'd be free to play Frisbee and give each other massages. You know, add some LSD and some questionable wardrobe choices, and the whole world could be like Burning Man. Now, that might sound pretty good, but ask yourself, what would happen under our current economic and political order? Okay, it seems likely that we would witness a level of wealth inequality and unemployment that we have never seen before, absent a willingness to immediately put this new wealth to the surface of all humanity. Okay, well, a few trillionaires could grace the covers of our business magazines, while the rest of the world would be free to starve.
So the yin is AI. AI is probabilistic. It's all about computing the likelihood that something will happen, the prediction of the future, using what it's learned. And an AI is always changing. It's updating its weights. It's learning about the future. And an AI is a set of algorithms that guess at reality. The yang part are blockchains. Blockchains are not probabilistic. They are deterministic. You know exactly what's going to happen, right? They are permanent. They are unchangeable. And they are algorithms and cryptography to record reality. So these two things can go really well together if you break them down into what they're really good at. So we live in a world where we are all using these services, right? And these services collect and monetize our data. That's the business model. But this is a problem because our data is the most valuable thing we have, and it will become more valuable as everything is slowly automated. Your data will be the only agency that you have. It will be your most valuable asset. So you need to own it. But right now we're giving it away for free in return for a free service. Ideally, these services would be paying us for our data, right? But that's just not the case right now. We need to redo all of these apps that we have in Web 2.0, everything from eBay to Uber to Lyft, all of it, Facebook, right?
Your phone is already an extension of you. You're already a cyborg. You don't even, well, most people don't realize they are already a cyborg. That phone is an extension of yourself.
But the idea is that these are apps that are run and maintained by the community that uses them, right? So think of Uber, for example. When I am a rider and I'm trying to find a driver, I have to use a third party, namely Uber, to find that driver. And so Uber takes a cut of this, and they have a bunch of malpractice as well that we all know of through all of their scandals. But ideally, I wouldn't have to trust Uber. I could just find my driver. He would get paid more. I would have to pay less because there's no third party. So it would be better for both of us, right? We would all earn some equity because we are all a part of the network. It's not just about earning money. We'd also earn equity, and we would be able to decide on the features of the app. So it would be a more democratic process, right? It's kind of like a community-owned grocery store, for example. Instead of one central person owning it, everybody who is a part of the network would also be a participant in the infrastructure of that network as well. It's not all good. There's also bad. I can't talk about the good without talking about the bad, right? So imagine this. What you're seeing here is a picture of art that was completely generated by AI. There is no human in the loop. So imagine an AI that lives on a blockchain, and its job is to just generate art. So what it does this. It generates some art. It then sells it on some marketplace. It earns some money. It uses that money to feed itself more computing power. It uses that computing power to then generate more art. It just keeps amassing wealth. And no one can shut it down because it lives on a blockchain, right? No one can shut it down. You'd have to have more computing power than the 500 fastest supercomputers in the world combined to shut it down. Eventually, it becomes the wealthiest entity on the planet, right? So that's kind of scary if you think about it. It's an unkillable AI. and it lives on a blockchain.
We're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on.
It's called blockchain. So, for the first time now in human history, people everywhere can trust each other and transact peer-to-peer. And trust is established not by some big institution, but by collaboration, by cryptography, and by some clever code. And because trust is native to the technology, I call this the trust protocol. Now you're probably wondering, well, how does this thing work? Fair enough. Assets, digital assets like money to music and everything in between, are not stored in a central place, but they're distributed across a global ledger using the highest level of cryptography. And when a transaction is conducted, it's posted globally across millions and millions of computers. And out there around the world is a group of people called miners. These are not young people, they're Bitcoin miners. And they have massive computing power at their fingertips, 10 to 100 times bigger than all of Google worldwide. And these miners do a lot of work. And every 10 minutes, kind of like the heartbeat of a network, a block gets created that has all the transactions from the previous 10 minutes. And then the miners get to work trying to solve some tough problems. And they compete. And the first miner to find out the truth and to validate the block is rewarded in digital currency, in the case of the Bitcoin blockchain with Bitcoin. And then, this is the key part, that block is linked to the previous block and the previous block to create a chain of blocks, and everyone is timestamped, kind of like with a digital wax seal. So if I wanted to go and hack a block and say, pay you and you with the same money, I'd have to hack that block, plus all the preceding blocks, the entire history of commerce on that blockchain, not just on one computer, but across millions of computers simultaneously, all using the highest levels of encryption in the light of the most powerful computing resource in the world that's watching me. Tough to do. It's called the blockchain. Blockchain. Now, it's not the most sonorous word in the world, but I believe that this is now the next generation of the internet, and that it holds vast promise for every business, every society, and for all of you individually. You know, for the past few decades, we've had the internet of information. And when I send you an email or a PowerPoint file or something, I'm actually not sending you the original, I'm sending you a copy. And that's great. This is democratized information. But when it comes to assets, things like money, financial assets like stocks and bonds, loyalty points, intellectual property, music, art, a vote, carbon credit, and other assets, sending you a copy is a really bad idea. If I send you $100, it's really important that I don't still have money. So what if there were not only an internet of information, what if there were an internet of value? Some kind of vast, global, distributed ledger running on millions of computers and available to everybody, and where every kind of asset, from money to music, could be stored, moved, transacted, exchanged, and managed, all without powerful intermediaries. What if there were a native medium for value? The most powerful asset of the digital age is data. And data is really a new asset class, maybe bigger than previous asset classes like land under the agrarian economy or an industrial plant, or even money. And all of you, we create this data, we create this asset. And we leave this trail of digital crumbs behind us as we go throughout life. And these crumbs are collected into a mirror image of you, the virtual you. And the virtual you may know more about you than you do, because you can't remember what you bought a year ago or said a year ago or your exact location a year ago. And the virtual you is not owned by you. That's the big problem. So today there are companies working to create an identity in a black box.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
The virtual you owned by you. And this black box moves around with you as you travel throughout the world, and it's very, very stingy. It only gives away the shred of information that's required to do something. A lot of transactions, the seller doesn't even need to know who you are. They just need to know that they got paid. And then this avatar is sweeping up all this data and enabling you to monetize it. And this is a wonderful thing because it can also help us protect our privacy. And privacy is the foundation of a free society. Let's get this asset that we create back under our control, where we can own our own identity and manage it responsibly.
So, detailed in the latest patent filed by Microsoft is a new proof-of-work crypto where energy-intensive mining is replaced by basic human energy, in their word. Now, if it sounds a bit like The Matrix or that episode of Black Mirror titled 15 Million Merits, well, you may be right. And we're going to take a closer look at this strange patent titled Cryptocurrency System Using Body Activity Data. All right. According to the details included in this patent, Microsoft's proposed cryptocurrency would utilize body activity data, harnessing human individuals as a sort of ASIC mining rig to mine on the network. Now, on the surface, this seems a bit creepy. The idea of wiring humans up in series to some mining farm or in order to power the network while tracking their energy output sounds like a dystopian solution to solving the so-called energy crisis behind proof-of-work mining. But let's dig a bit deeper into how this is supposed to work exactly. In this patent, Microsoft describes or the need for human body activity to perform the mining is actually pretty simple. It's not necessarily warehouses filled with humans chained to giant mouse wheels yet, driving electric generators yet, but rather brainwave readings or body heat emissions from users who are performing tasks scheduled by an information or service provider, such as viewing an ad or when using certain internet services. So good for advertisers. The patent goes on to explain how this type of human activity would capture and replace the massive computational work that current proof-of-work mining performs in securing conventional cryptocurrency systems, conventional cryptocurrency blockchains with proof-of-work. That's because the data that is gathered from reading body activity can in itself be regarded as a sort of proof-of-work. Or, as the patent describes, users can unconsciously solve computationally difficult problems required in proof of work. Now, in the patent, they explain how certain tasks, depending on the load placed on the user, would reduce or increase computational output accordingly. As for input-output, well, the Microsoft cryptocurrency powered by data gleaned from the human body would most likely work through a server that's providing commands to a user wearable device, like a wristband or, again, most likely a headband. The hardware device would be coupled to the user in order to verify if the body activity satisfies the conditions set by the system and would award cryptocurrency to the host, which verified the requested data.
Another reason we're told not to worry is that these machines can't help but share our values because they will be literally extensions of ourselves. They'll be grafted onto our brains and will essentially become their limbic systems. Now, take a moment to consider that the safest and only prudent path forward recommended is to implant this technology directly into our brains.
Do you think that it's likely that we will merge somehow or another with this sort of technology and it'll augment what we are now? Or do you think it will replace us?
Well, that's the scenario. The merge scenario with AI is the one that seems like probably the best. Like
for us.
Yes. Like if you can't beat it, join it.
Now, this may in fact be the safest and only prudent path forward, but usually one's safety concerns about a technology have to be pretty much worked out before you stick it inside your head. Okay. The deeper problem is that building superintelligent AI on its own seems likely to be easier than building superintelligent AI and having a completed neuroscience that allows us to seamlessly integrate our minds with it. And given that the companies and governments doing this work are likely to perceive themselves to be in a race against all others, given that to win this race is to win the world, provided you don't destroy it in the next moment, then it seems likely that whatever is easier to do will get done first.
So instead of replacing us, it will radically change our capabilities.
Yes, it will enable anyone who wants to have superhuman cognition. Anyone who wants. This is not a matter of earning power, because your earning power would be vastly greater after you do it. So it's just like anyone who wants can just do it. In theory. That's the theory. And if that's the case, then, and let's say billions of people do it, then the outcome for humanity will be the sum of human will.
It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all. What we've seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. Mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them, and we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition?
Some sort of Ray Kurzweil scenario where they download themselves into a computer?
You will be essentially snapshotted into a computer at any time. If your biological self dies, you could probably just upload into a new unit.
And this is where avatars come in. As virtual worlds become more immersive and interactive, and as robots progress and become more capable, it becomes easy to imagine a scenario in which humans with unlimited lifespans choose to prioritize the safety of their physical bodies and brains over everything else, remaining in a safe bunker and interacting with broader society only through digital or robotic avatars. These sights, sounds, smells, and sensations may be convincingly duplicated, or even if they can't, your brain could be stimulated to the point that it can't tell the difference. How close to perfect would these systems have to be for you, personally, to decide that the risk of losing an unlimited lifespan is not one worth taking?
Hypothetically, a possibility that we could copy your brain and reproduce it in silico, which means on a computer in zeros and ones, and actually run the simulation of your brain.
In principle, maybe it's possible to transfer our consciousness and at some point maybe even become immortal.
What does it mean when you can change your age, race, sex, and more? When using avatars, how do you know that you're actually interacting with who you think you're interacting with? What level of ownership or control should you have over avatars that resemble you?
And Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint." Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, "Sell me this day thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me this day." And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God.
So before I explain Web 3.0, I need to explain this mind control that has been given out. When I hear people speak like this, I don't know if they're just being sinister or if they actually believe this story themselves. But it really doesn't matter. The future is being framed in a way of decentralizing the world, giving power back to the people. Basically, people believing that Web 3.0, the metaverse, and cryptocurrencies are tools to bring power to the people so that we are not controlled by corporations and governments. They believe that the world will be decentralized and the power will go back to the people. You know that phrase, power to the people. That's what these people believe.
Right on, my brother. Power to the people.
The people excited about cryptocurrencies, about NFTs, the metaverse, and Web3, they believe that this new change coming to the world will be about bringing equality and fairness to the world. So they are all super hyped about this coming future. This mind control is just another version of the vision that they try to sell us with the idea of democracy. So understanding, these people believe that we are moving to a much fairer, more just world, and that these new technologies of Web3, the metaverse, and cryptocurrencies are all about building that new world. These technologies are sold to the people to help them believe in the vision of this coming new world order, that this new world will be fair and just and for the people. Now, if you understand how I feel about the new world order, you would know quickly that I do not share in any of that programming or beliefs. I know that it is absolutely a ridiculous thought to believe power is going back to the people. Power is always held in the hands of a small few. The only power that they give out is the power of illusion. They give out the illusion of freedom. And if you really understand this world, after the massive amount of control that they have now, they can build these structures that make people believe they have power when they are actually a slave. That's the Matrix, by the way. That's why this video is in the series Breaking Out of the Matrix. Anyways, the fact is that in the system that they have created, they have amassed so much power that they don't need the same power structures that they built before. And they can control people more directly without the need of a lot of the red tape that is now present. They want a one world government and a one world currency. And for the one world government to be formed, they need to remove the barriers, and that is what these new technologies are doing for them. They make a system that you can't buy or sell without having a mark. This is that way. You have to understand that this is a completely new system and new world being created. This system does not come about until after the chaos. The system is prepared to implement the new changes, yes, and the people are ready to adopt it, yes. But for full implementation, there must be enough chaos to support a massive change for the whole world to adopt. Now, this is not a hypothetical or far out science fiction. This is all technology that's already here. They're just waiting to roll it out. Let me sum it up how I see the rollout. After the economic currency collapse that will throw the whole world in chaos, after countries are destroyed and populations lost because of the war that will ensue, after people die from famine and the new pestilences, after our systems are made insecure because of cyber attacks, after more judgments happen that they will blame on climate change, after the world has been completely uprooted, a new world government and a new leader will work with the brightest minds all over the world and bring in a plan of peace and security that will bring the world out of the ashes that it came from. And they will fix the problems that brought the world to the division that it's in. This phoenix that rises out of the ashes will be the new world order. The changes implemented will be the great reset. And the leader that solves the problems will be the Antichrist. The system that will be built will be in the metaverse, and the whole world will be brought online. The whole world will be able to interact with the beast, the Antichrist. He'll be in the metaverse, and if you want to be a part of his solution, you will accept his mark. That will be the only way you can access this new system. And that will be your only way to buy and sell in this world economy. Because they'll be tying your personal identity to the chip, which will make it sound more secure and less hackable and make sure that there's less fraud and everything is secure. Peace and safety.